Welcome to the Academic Woman Amplified podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Mazak, tenured full professor, mom of three, and firm believer that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. It's something we all dream about, a sabbatical or research leave when you can spend all your time on writing and reading and thinking, then you'll really be productive, right? But anyone who has actually taken a sabbatical will tell you that you soon discover that big blocks of time, the things you've been craving all this time, right? We always say we could do so many things with big blocks of time. They can actually make you feel more guilty and less productive than you feel during a regular semester. So in this episode, I'll be talking about how to plan your sabbatical or research leave so that it is what it's supposed to be, time for you to do the deep thinking that your scholarly work requires. Now, some of you are asking yourselves, why in the world am I talking about sabbaticals and research leave in this time of budget cuts and furloughs? Well, the kind of unfair, absolutely unfair reality of academia at the present moment when I'm recording this episode is that some people are experiencing budget cuts and furloughs and other people are not. So in our Elevate and Amplify programs, we have been working with clients who have sabbaticals and research leaves this semester and in the coming semesters. And after coaching one of those clients, I realized that so many people who go on a sabbatical or research leave or take a sabbatical or research leave go into it unprepared or with misaligned expectations and end up doing a lot of what I call wheel spinning at the beginning of the sabbatical or leave. And they end up with like a lot of regret at the end. So I want to eliminate that for you by giving you a clear plan for how to go into your sabbatical with the right mindset, with the right tools and planning mechanisms set up so that you will be successful and happy and rested at the end of your sabbatical. Now, before we get started into the nitty-gritty of the sabbatical planning process, I want to let you know that our Elevate program, which is our program that helps you up-level your post-tenure career, is open for enrollment right now. But it is closing for enrollment at the end of January because the program starts in February. Elevate is a one-on-one and group coaching program which additionally has trainings in it, where you get to figure out what your next career move is. It's for academics post-tenure who are tired, who are maybe a little burnout, who rush to get tenure and now are kind of like, this still doesn't feel good. I'm still not making enough money. I still am not getting to work on my things. And this isn't exactly the career I worked so hard to get. Elevate is designed to help you create the career that you deserve now post-tenure. Elevate's an application-only program, and here's how it works. We'll link up in the show notes to a very short 5-question or so application that you can fill out. And if we approve your application, then we invite you to a special training that we are holding later this month. In this training, we talk about how you can up-level your career and the 5 keys to success post-tenure. So all you have to do to get invited to that special training is submit your application. At the end of the podcast, I'll circle back and I'll be going through all of our programs for 2021 so you can decide if one of our programs is for you. All right, let's get to the sabbatical or research leave planning part of this podcast. So the first part of planning your sabbatical is the pre-sabbatical part, okay? And I call this clearing the decks. Now, a lot of people, when they think about going into a sabbatical or research leave semester, they think, well, I'm not going to be teaching, but I can still do a few other things. I'll let a few projects, hang out in my schedule. I can stay on this committee over here, or I can do this collaborative project. Sure, because I'm going to have all this time. That is the wrong way to go about planning your sabbatical. So instead, what you want to do is absolutely remove yourself from 100% of the committees and projects and collaborations that are not related to your sabbatical work. So this brings us to another point, which is that you need to figure out what the focus of your sabbatical is. Now, in most places, when you take a sabbatical or research leave, you propose like a project to do, right? So that the result of your sabbatical will be your book is written, or that you'll have gone to this archive and researched this thing or whatever. So that is the point of your sabbatical. So you need to remove everything else. Do not fall into the trap of, oh, I'm going to have so much time on my hands. Surely I can still do X, Y, Z. No. When I say get rid of all your projects, I mean 100%. Don't let any unwanted projects or other people's emergencies creep onto your plate during your sabbatical. I have worked with women who have had this happen where basically their sabbatical gets mowed over by committee work and things that they're really not supposed to be doing during sabbatical. So you need to figure out or have in your mind what the main sabbatical research project is and clear everything else. Let your co-authors and collaborators who aren't on your particular focus project, let them know you're on sabbatical, you're unavailable, that you'll pick up where you left off in 6 months or in a year. You really want to clear all the decks. Part of this, of course, is setting up an out-of-office email message. So a sabbatical or research leave is a fantastic reason to stop obsessively checking email or to reset people's expectations around your reply time for emails. So you want to set up that out-of-office email message, say that you're on sabbatical. It just needs to be a very simple autoresponder in your email that says that you're not regularly checking emails because you're doing your sabbatical project. Of course, you'd have to decide what regularly checking emails means to you and what you want to do. But I suggest a complete reset in terms of expectations of other people around email for you. So the way that you get prepared for your sabbatical or research leave is to clear the decks. Now, if you're listening to this podcast and you're already on leave and you haven't done this, it's not too late. Okay. So preferably you would do this before the sabbatical semester starts. But if you're already in it and you're listening and you realize like, yeah, I really should have quit that committee or postponed that project or whatever, it's not too late to do it now. You want to have nothing on your plate except for your sabbatical project. Okay, so now I'm going to move into what the actual days and weeks of a sabbatical or research leave look like. So there's a big misconception around taking a sabbatical or leave that because you're not teaching, and maybe because you cleared the decks, right? You can work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So people go into the sabbatical and they think, I'm going to have all this time. I'm going to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'm going to sit at my desk for that amount of time or whatever. But in my experience coaching with and working with people on sabbatical, this is absolutely not the case. That you can't actually be doing, productive writing or even reading for a total of 8 hours a day. So instead, I want you to think about your sabbatical weeks differently. And the first thing I want you to do is I want you to choose a day of the week to take off so that during your sabbatical or leave, you're working 4 days and you are off 3 days. Now, you can play with this. You can make it into like a 3-day weekend by taking a Friday or Monday off. You could have a floating day. But the reason to do this is because one of the things that we think on sabbatical is like, oh, well, I don't have these scheduled courses I'm teaching or whatever. So I'll schedule my doctor's appointments and I'll do this thing that I never get to do. And I'll do that thing that I never get to do. And what happens is that, and first of all, you should do that, but you should do it with a plan. So what happens so much of the time is that people kind of start off their sabbatical thinking, I have all this time. They end up not using their time or planning their time really well at the beginning. And then they feel like they have to catch up, or then they feel behind. It's like a total mind game. So here's the way you're going to get rid of all of that. You're going to just decide that you are going to take, work 4 days, be off for 3. And a little advice about how you're going to do that. Think about what you want that day to be. Is it a day that if you have smaller kids, do you want to spend time off with them so that maybe a Friday, because there's a lot of Friday and Monday holidays for kids, right? Like that's the day you take off so that you can be them or with them? Or do you want to take off a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday because you want to be off without the kids, right? Have permission to do whatever you want for a whole day without thinking about the people that you are caring for, right? That they're in some kind of care during that time. So think about that. But what I don't want you to do is think, well, I'm on sabbatical here and I have to grind, 5 days a week. And also the flip of that, which is I'm on sabbatical, I have so much time, so I can do all these things I've been meaning to do. You can, but I would rather see you do that in a very regular, rhythmic way, right? Like where you have 4 days on, 3 days off. So this recommendation is pointing towards the fact that you need to have structure. We all have this craving for big swaths of unstructured time, but really big swaths of unstructured time, like a semester long or a year long, can end up not working out in terms of how much you want to get done, how you want to feel. So we need to put a little structure on your days, but we need to really think about how we're going to incorporate rest and downtime into that structure. So the first is you're taking 1 weekday a week off. And then, so the next part is you want to plan your days with the expectation in mind that your max soaring sessions should be about 4 hours per day. Now, what do I mean by soaring sessions? So soaring sessions are writing sessions or working sessions where you feel energy and drive, you feel uplifted by kind of some invisible force that's propelling you forward. You don't feel fidgety or that you need to take a lot of breaks. You have some amount of focus and urge to get the work done. So the image, right, is like a soaring bird that's uplifted in the sky. The bird is not frantically flapping wings. The bird is uplifted by invisible currents, right, and held aloft. That's what you want to feel during your writing and working sessions, the ones that require the most focus and energy from you. And how we create that is one of two ways. Either you use what I call your soar state, which is the time of day when you kind of naturally have that feeling. For me, it's in the morning between 8 and 11. If I work during that time, I can get things done a lot faster. I concentrate a lot better. I can do tasks even that I don't love to do with some energy and excitement. And so your soar state is a time of day where you have that kind of almost unexplained energy. And in other episodes, I've talked about how you can find that soar state. And I definitely teach that as the basis in my programs for all of the writing systems that I teach. The other way that you can create soaring sessions is through co-writing. So co-writing is just writing with somebody else. And we do it in our Momentum program. using Zoom. So everybody gets onto Zoom, we're muted, we put our goals in the chat, we work for about 45, 50 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes, we put our achievements in the chat. And we're just there together. Some people have their cameras on, some people don't. And this is something that we do inside of our Momentum program. It's a co-writing program. So we host these sessions for you. You don't have to schedule them. You don't have to have a paid Zoom account to do them. You just need to show up for the sessions that we schedule. And this year in 2021, we're expanding the number of sessions that we do, the number of scheduled Momentum co-writing sessions. And there's other parts of that program, which I'll explain at the end of this episode in case it's interesting to you. But co-writing is definitely something you could do with a friend. Maybe you have a colleague that's also on sabbatical, and you could have scheduled times where you get on Zoom together, or if it's safe, to meet together in person to write. That's another way to get that soaring feeling, because when you have somebody else there, there's some kind of, again, like mysterious energy that happens when you're seeing the other person or other people working. You get to kind of create that soaring feeling by being with other people. So the community helps you to uplift you and hold you up as you sustain the work you're doing. So those soaring sessions are really important for doing the kind of deep work that you do on sabbatical or on research leave, because that's when you're going to be able to really get the most words on the page if you're trying to do that, or have the thoughts you need to have, connect the dots that you've been wanting to connect by using that soaring feeling, right? But you'll never have that feeling for 8 hours a day. So you have to plan your day so that, and this is an estimate, that this is what I recommend to my coaching clients, about 4 hours a day of soaring sessions, right? Either you plan writing sessions or working sessions, because they don't have to be words on the page writing, but you plan those sessions during your soar state times, or you meet together and do co-writing sessions, but only 4 hours a day. So now, just to recap, right, we're working 4 hours a day, 4 days a week on whatever our sabbatical project is. And that's a realistic expectation that you can maintain. And even that, sometimes you'll take more time off, or sometimes maybe you'll work a little longer than 4 hours on your project, but don't expect to be sitting at your desk and being quote unquote productive for 8 hours a day during your sabbatical. That's not what's going to happen. So it's better for you to go in with that expectation than for you to go in with the expectation that you're going to be frantically typing or reading all the things that you meant to read for the last 2 years, in 8 hours a day. You just won't. So let's reset your expectation and let's do 4 hours of soaring sessions a day, 4 days a week. Now, you might be thinking, what am I going to do with those other hours? Well, you can rest. You can read a novel, or you can read for your work too. You could potentially work on secondary projects if you wanted, but I'm going to talk about that in a second. But in terms of your sabbatical project, 4 soaring session hours a day, 4 days a week. And what I would actually recommend is that you start with that. You write it into your calendar like that. And the rest of the time you are resting, because something that's really important is the next point in my sabbatical planning list here, which is that the point of a sabbatical or research leave is to give you unstructured time. The university gives you unstructured time. You structure it yourself, to give you time to do more creation than you would normally do in a semester, or to do more creation around a specific topic, right, than you do during a normal semester. And so whenever you are trying to create a lot, you need to also restore. So let me explain this clearly, right? Like, so creation is anything that involves you, your ideas manifested into something in the world. Like writing is an act of creation, right? Any kind of creative endeavor like painting or writing poetry or anything like that. But also creation can be, or is definitely, when you create a lecture or when you create a course, you're making something out of nothing, right? You're putting your thoughts into the world and creating something that wasn't there before. So during a sabbatical or research leave, that's your expectation. That's your job, right? Is to create the book chapters that you promised or to create the research project that you promised when you applied for the sabbatical or the research leave. So the point of sabbatical from the university's perspective is to do this kind of major act of creation. But a sabbatical is also about rest. And the reason it has to be about rest is because if you are going to do a lot of creating, you're going to have to do a lot of resting. And I call this, and this comes from the Martha Beck School of Life Coaching, the create, restore cycle. So every time we create, we need to be restoring. The more we create, the more we restore. And by restore, I mean rest. I mean do things that aren't academic related. So if you're a musician, but that's your hobby, not your academic work, practicing your music or doing something, I don't know, whatever kind of hobbies or other things you have that you do that are not directly related to your work, your academic work or your sabbatical work, those are the things you need to do during your restore time. And they need to be, like the word says, restorative for you. And they can simply be resting activities, reading, watching Netflix, sleeping more, whatever you need to ramp up restoration if you're expecting yourself to ramp up creation. Okay? So that's why we do 4 days of work and 3 days off. That's why we do 4 hours of soaring sessions a day, not 8. Because the more you create, the more you're going to need to restore. And if you want to up your creation, you have to up your restoration. Like what people think, what we think, what we're programmed to think is, oh, if I want to create more, then I need to sit down at my desk and be typing more, or I need to be doing more hours of creation. When actually what you need to do is an appropriate amount of restoration, and that will help your creative hours be much more productive, more creative. Okay, the last part of this sabbatical or research leave planning podcast, I want to talk about if you are hoping to complete multiple projects. So I know you're thinking, I have so much time, so I'll be able to do this article and that article and collect this data and analyze this and all the things. So I just want you to remember and to know that your sabbatical is for you. Your sabbatical is for you to advance your career, you to have the feeling of happiness that comes from doing the academic work that you're kind of wishing you had time to do during a busy semester. And I want you to enjoy it. And one of the ways that you'll enjoy it is if you can have that focus on one project for the sabbatical or research leave time. So here's a method that I teach whenever we do our planning sessions inside of my programs. And sometimes I do these kind of publicly in webinars. But the general idea here is that what you want to do is you want to make a giant list of all the things that you think you're going to do during the sabbatical. And you want to look at them and you want to kind of rate them as to their impact, their value for your career, the joy that they give you, and criteria that are important to you. And you want to understand that what you really want is to only focus on the one project that gets rated the highest. But that if you absolutely feel like you must do more than one thing, that you just do 3. that you take the top 3 highest rated projects. And I would say you want to look at the projects that are most important for your career and for yourself, not the most urgent ones. So to circle back to the idea of clearing the decks, if you have deadlines for unrelated projects coming up during your sabbatical time, it's best if you can clear those off before the sabbatical starts so that you're not really expecting any revise and resubmits to come through or anything. But that's, of course, not always possible. So I want to give you a method for dealing with more than one project at a time after you've definitely cleared the decks and culled away those projects that aren't going to get touched. The last thing I'll say about that before I go on to the multiple project method I'm going to tell you about is that don't think that your sabbatical is going to be this time where during the sabbatical, you're going to clear the decks for the following semesters. So all those little lingering projects and those almost done articles that you think like, oh, I'll just like bang this out during my sabbatical, but they're not your sabbatical project. Don't think that you're going to finish all of those things. That's not the right mindset to go into your sabbatical with. The mindset for the sabbatical is, I get to focus on one thing. I get to do one thing. I get to have all my thoughts about one thing instead of being pulled in 1,000 directions, which is what we usually feel like during an academic semester. Okay? So that's what you want. Don't think that you're going to like clear out all the cobwebs during your sabbatical and finish all those little projects that have been hanging around. That's not what the sabbatical is for. You'll be much happier if you deliberately put all those things aside and focus on one thing. All right, so let's talk about if you absolutely must work on more than one project at a time. So let's take the revise and resubmit as an example. Let's say that you're working on your sabbatical project and in comes a revise and resubmit, right? Well, a couple of things here. So yes, you're obviously a revise and resubmit is the closest that you have to something being published. And so you'll probably want to get that out. Maybe the journal gave you a deadline that you're going to have to turn it around in a certain amount of time. One technique that you can use is sprinting. Okay, so again, this is something I teach inside my programs, but basically the idea of a writing sprint is to use 2 weeks worth of your soaring sessions dedicated to one project. So if you're working on your sabbatical project, you get a revise and resubmit, and you're like, okay, well, I need to fit this in. The best thing to do is to get your sabbatical project or whatever you're working on to a certain stopping point, and then take 2 weeks and sprint on the revise and resubmit. And you can play with this sprinting idea because what sprinting does is it mimics working on just one project, right? You put everything else aside and you sprint on one project. So if you are trying to do multiple projects during your sabbatical, then you could use a sprinting technique to kind of cycle through them, where you do 2 weeks on project 1, 2 weeks on project 2, 2 weeks on project 3, and circle back. Or if you have a project that is just too good to not do, like a revise and resubmit that comes through during your sabbatical, then you could deliberately plan a 2-week sprint for it. What you want to do is approximate, at all moments actually, you want to approximate working on one thing at a time, because that is how you will get that depth of work and the calmness of mind to be more productive. So to recap, for sabbatical planning or research leave planning, you're going to want to clear the decks. And when I say clear the decks, I mean 100%. You're going to want to choose a day of the week that you're going to take off so that you're working 4 days a week, rest 3. You're going to want to set the expectation of working on your sabbatical or research leave project for 4 hours a day, not 8, and that those 4 hours would ideally happen during soaring sessions, which you can achieve by working during your soar state time or by using co-writing as a technique. You also need to be highly aware of the restore create cycle and amp up your restoration in order to amp up your creation. And finally, if you are going to work on more than one project during your sabbatical or research leave, I recommend using a sprinting technique to mimic working on one project at a time. I hope that this has been helpful to you if you are one of the lucky ones who are getting a sabbatical or research leave in the near future. Now, at the end here of the podcast, I want to talk to you about our programs in 2021. So if you're new to the podcast, of course, welcome. What I do on this podcast is I give weekly writing advice and interesting interviews to help inspire you to get your writing done and take control of your career. That's what I do on the podcast. We also have a suite of programs that are directed towards academics to help you to leverage writing to advance your career. So first, I'll mention that our Elevate program is enrolling right now. This is a 6-month program that will help you up-level your post-tenure career, and it's invitation only. So you need to apply. You need to apply, we assess your application, and then we invite you to a special training session where we will give you all the program details. But I want to be clear about the investment in this program so that you know already. So the Elevate program is an $8,000 program. If you have enrolled in our Navigate program since about October of 2019, then you get a special rate on our Elevate program, which is $6,000. So we will link up all the programs in the show notes. The Elevate application is open now. Basically, what would happen is you submit the application. It's not a commitment. It's just it just helps us get to know you to figure out if the program is a right fit for you. We look at it, we invite you to our special training, and then you can make a decision about the program. It starts in February. It runs February through July. So it's enrolling right now, and there's only a few spots left. We run the program in small cohorts, and so you'll want to apply if you want to do Elevate during 2021. We are only running it one time. Okay, so that's our Elevate program for up-leveling your post-tenure career. And by the way, for my international listeners, we use the term post-tenure, but we know that the word tenure isn't used in the UK. It's just the concept or the words that you use are different, and maybe the contracts are different, but the post-tenure feeling is the same. Okay. So we have had several clients from the UK, and we know that you don't use the word tenure, but that mid-career moment is what this program is for. All right, the other program that we run is Amplify. And Amplify is our program for pre-tenure women. You can apply for Amplify right now, but we are not taking on additional students because it's full. The next time we are opening the program will be in September 2021. So we'll be enrolling for that program in the summer. But Amplify is also a 6-month program, and it is $7,000 or $5,000 if you're a Navigate member already. And so if you're thinking ahead, if you're like, okay, well, I think I'm going to find funding for this, or I'm going to save my money so I can do Amplify, then you can definitely apply. We'll link the application here. All you'll do is apply, and that will get you on the waiting list. We'll look at the applications, and we will be doing information sessions so that you can get all the information that you need in order to enroll in the September cohort. We are reconfiguring Amplify a little bit. It used to be a year-long program, and it will now be, we're running it differently so that all the content happens in the first 6 months instead of a year. So again, all you need to do is apply, and you will be invited to an info session. And the real application time, or the time that we'll be enrolling that program, is in this summer. So that's Amplify and Elevate. And Amplify, by the way, is a faculty writing accelerator that includes also one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and content around how to go up for tenure with confidence, because you have your writing game where you want it to be, and you know where you're headed and what you're going to do with your career, so that going up for tenure, getting tenure is just as easeful as possible. So besides those two high-level coaching programs, we also have our Navigate program. Navigate, we call it Navigate the Writing Roadmap. And that program is a $2,000 to $2,500, depending on when you enroll, course that has group coaching in it. And we just did an enrollment for that in November. So we have our Phoenix cohort. We're nicknaming them because we're going to rise in 2021. We have our Phoenix cohort going through the program right now. And the next time we'll enroll officially in a big enrollment period for that program will be May of 2021. If you're looking for something right now and you're like, well, those are big investments, I want to get to know Kathy and her team a little bit better, then the program for you is Momentum. Momentum is a co-writing program. And what that means is that we run scheduled co-writing sessions multiple times a day. And you can get on during one of those scheduled sessions and feel that soaring feeling of working together at the same time of other people who are also working on their writing. Sometimes people use it for other kinds of co-working type of things, but it's completely done silently and just using the chat. As part of Momentum, you get to be in our very special and separate online community where you can ask questions and our coaches will answer them. We also have, as part of that program, a weekly half-an-hour session called Momentum Mindset. And that is meant to be like a little injection of energy into your writing every week. In Momentum, we have graduate students writing their dissertations. We have full professors who just need to have that touch point of feeling that soaring feeling during their writing. We really all kinds of people inside of there. And we really love that program as a way to learn to put writing on your calendar because they're scheduled sessions. You can come to as many or as few as you want. And if you've listened to my other podcast episodes, you probably know that I don't advocate a write every day, no matter what type of writing system, but you could write every day with Momentum. But what I really want everyone to do is go for consistency and honoring that writing time so you can commit to 2 to 3 sessions a week and you will see big changes in the amount that you are writing. So those are our programs for 2021. We have Momentum, which is always enrolling, so you can join today. We have Elevate, which is enrolling now until the end of January because we start that 6-month program in February 2021. We have Navigate. Navigate, by the way, is for, really anyone who is wanting to learn how to use writing to create the career that they want. So we teach writing systems, we teach pipeline planning. We really teach you how to get your writing done in the midst of your busy life in Navigate. And that program will be enrolling the first week of May 2021. And our Amplify program is now closed for enrollment because it's full and will be opening up for new cohorts in September 2021. But we encourage you to submit an application so that we can invite you to an information session, which will give you all the info that you need if you're looking to enroll in September. So those are our programs for 2021. If you love this podcast, then you will probably love our programs. And I would love to support you in getting your writing done in 2021. And more than that, in investing and helping you invest in your writing in order to create the career and life you want. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time loving on yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you're feeling pulled in 1,000 directions and can't seem to carve out time to write, I've got a solution for you. Go grab my 10 ways to make time to write cheat sheet. Just go to kathymazak.com/podcast-time to learn my best quick tips for putting writing at the center of your career where it belongs. We'll link that up in the show notes. Just go to kathymazak.com/podcast-time.